Good morning. My name is Nancy Dunn Thompson, and I'm with mmlearn.org at Morningside Ministries. mmlearn is a program at Morningside Ministries that's dedicated to improving the quality of life and the quality of care for older adults by training caregivers. The caregivers we focus on are family caregivers, healthcare providers, and pastoral care providers. And our distinct difference is that we do it through distance learning. Okay, you know my name, Nancy Dunn Thompson, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself as a learner. I have a PhD in adult professional community education. I completed my master's in my 20s, my early 20s, and I didn't return to school to a doctoral program until I was 52, and I completed it when I was 56. And I share that with you because we are all lifelong learners. If we want to progress, to grow, to be alive, then we have to be lifelong learners. And I think I'm a good example that you're never too old to learn. Okay, now turn off your cell phone, but really I just want to ask that you be part of creating a supportive learning environment for your colleagues who are with you today. If you're watching this by yourself, turn off your phone and give yourself some time to learn in some quiet environment if that's what works for you. Now, if you're a kinesthetic learner and you're going to learn about that, go to the back of the room and stand up when you need to. Or if you're at your computer and you're learning alone, stand up, stretch, stop it, move. Do what you need to do to make the most of your learning time. If you're a visual learner, and we must not have any in this class because visual learners like to sit on the front row. So if you're a visual learner and you're in a group, come on to the front row. If you're a visual learner, get your highlighter out because you're going to want to highlight your notes. If you're a kinesthetic learner, you're probably also going to want to take some notes. And if you're an auditory learner, I want you to read with me as we go through some of these slides. Okay, the title of our program today is Pedagogy. It's an overview of adult learning. And why is this important to training coordinators? Well, because training adults is part of the job that you perform every day. For you to be effective, you need to employ the best, the most proven strategies and techniques of adult learning. Training and education is critical to the people that you train in developing their competencies. And primarily we're going to be talking about what I'd suggest that you do with direct care staff, and in particular CNAs, because that's the largest group of people that you're going to be training. And you need to be good at teaching because we are a highly regulated industry. What you teach, what you convey to the people who are your learners can determine what lawsuits we face in the future, how efficiently we operate, how much money we have to do extra things that will be good for our residents and for employees. And again, today we're focusing on what we need to do when we're teaching certified nurses assistants. And in Module 1, we're going to learn some new terminology. I think it will be new. Some of it will be. We're going to learn a little bit about the history, and I hope we learn about connections. Okay, is this a new word to you? Andragogy. I want you to say it with me. Andragogy. Okay, let's spell it. A-N-D-R-A-G-O-G-Y. Well, probably you've seen goji in lots of words. It's a Greek word. And I think you could probably figure out what andra means. But this is what the definition is. One of the things I wanted to tell you is that it is derived from andra, which means man, and goji, which means leading. So it means leading man. Well, I think we're going to be leading some women, don't you? So I don't know how we should change that, but it's a little sexist to me. And part of the whole idea of andragogy is the idea of teaching a man to fish. That if you feed someone for a day, you just give them the food, they never can do that on their own. But if you teach them to fish, they can feed themselves for a lifetime. Well, in adult learning, what we want to do is build self-directed learners who will be lifelong learners, who will seek out information, who will ask themselves difficult questions and will be critical in their thinking. So, here's let's say it again, andragogy, and what does it mean? It's the methods and teaching techniques when we're teaching adults. Okay, the word that's most often used is an andragogy, and I bet most people haven't heard of andragogy. What word is most commonly used when we think of teaching? It's pedagogy. And that's generally thought of as the art and skill of teaching. But if you look at the history, it actually is based on a Greek word, peda, which means child, and gogy, which we know now means leading. So pedagogy actually started out as a method for teaching children. And here's the definition. Pedagogy, the art, science, or profession of teaching. And it's I think the most common word in education in the general population. Now, what is the difference between, andragogy and pedagogy? And which is most dominant? Andragogy is the teaching of adults, and pedagogy we think of historically as teaching children. But there's really another difference. In pedagogy, it's kind of like pouring information in. The teacher determines the content. There's a curriculum, and if you think of PK through 12, most states have a standard curriculum, and that is what's going to be taught. In andragogy, people who are adults are more often making choices about what they're going to learn. So that's one of the primary differences. And the pedagogy model came into being in the, I think the 7th to 12th century during the Middle Ages in monasteries. And they taught young men exactly what they wanted them to know. And some people will say that that was also based on them not wanting the young men to be independent thinkers, because they wanted them to follow the knowledge that was poured into them. So let's look at andragogy again. And I hope now you could tell me what andragogy means. Okay, andragogy is teaching adults. And when you're talking about andragogy, you're going to refer, and no one does all of this, but a true person who's committed to andragogy would be calling their students, not students, but learners and participants. They would not think of themselves as a teacher so much as a trainer or facilitator. Their objectives are going to be more flexible. They're going to take adults where they are and move them to where they want to be. They're going to look at problems, real-life problems, and make it practical for them. And the learner is going to make a contribution to the class. They're not going to just sit there and absorb the information. The facilitator, the trainer, is going to use active training methods, and two that we commonly think of are at least having a discussion or making it experiential. And in adult learning, in andragogy, the teaching is learner-centered. It's not teacher-centered. And when we're teaching adults, we know that the participants, the learners, getting them involved is vital to the success of the teaching. Okay, how does that compare? And we're going to do this really quickly with pedagogy, and especially from a historical point of view. We normally think of learners as students. We think of the facilitators, the instructors as teachers, and the objectives and the content is generally predetermined. Whether or not the students make a contribution in the most basic way is not as important as it is in andragogy. And most of us have gone to classes that were based on pedagogy, where there really isn't a lot of interaction and participation, experiential learning. It's primarily lecture and demonstration. Doesn't mean you can't learn that way. May mean that you may not retain it or put it to use as much. And it's instructor-centered. But what I want to say is that good teachers, whether they're teaching children or adults, are going to use some of the active strategies and techniques of teaching when they're teaching children or adults or teenagers or anyone. Okay, and how is adult learning different? These are two principles I just want you to keep in mind as we're going through this. Adult learners are autonomous and they're self-directed. The teacher is a facilitator of learning rather than a content presenter only. Okay, and let's look at a very little history. Do you know when the term was first used? It was used in 1833. And it was used by a German high school teacher, Alexander Knapp, in a book that's entitled Plato's Educational Ideas, and he describes in that book the importance of adult learning. But adult learning has always happened, whether it's in the classroom or outside the classroom. But formal adult learning has gone on throughout the history of the United States. This is a class that was probably in the 40s or 50s. But the term andragogy is getting better known because lifelong learning is becoming more and more important. And we're doing intergenerational teaching. And you've had classes about intergenerational relationships as a teacher, as a facilitator of learning. That's something that you need to know about. And why do you think that adult learning is becoming so important? Think about how in your own job, just to keep up, you have to learn every day, every year. You have to take new courses. Think about how industries have changed and how some jobs become obsolete. People have had to train for brand new careers after being in a career for 20 or 30 years. So adult learning is going to become more and more important, and it's going to become very important as baby boomers retire, and maybe they're working part-time and they're going to need to update their training skills, and the workforce is going to change with the retirement of the baby boomers. There are going to be a lot of jobs that have to be filled, and those younger adults who are going to move into them are going to be cross-training maybe. They're going to be entering new career fields, but adult learning is more important now than it's ever been. And who is the father of adult learning? Does anyone have any idea? And do you know when he found out what the word andragogy was? He didn't find out about that until 1967. And he was at a conference, I think in Boston or Baltimore, and a Yugoslavian teacher came up to him and said, andragogy, and Malcolm Knowles said, what a goji? And that was the first time he had ever heard that word. And he is pretty much known or recognized as the father of adult learning in the United States.